All set? Okay. Oh, yeah. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Town of Nantucket Finance Committee meeting. This meeting is called to order, and we'd like to go right into our public hearing today for citizen warrant articles. This is the first of two public hearings that we will be holding. This is exclusively dedicated to the citizen warrant articles, and what I'd like to do, there's 30 this year, and the way that they've been presented to us is by letters, but that might be a little bit confusing. So I would like to call each article with the sponsor, and I'll give a brief description. And anyone who would like to comment, just please come down to either microphone and state your case. I'd like to introduce the members of the Finance Committee that are here right now, starting on my right, I guess to the left of your screen, Christy Kickham, Cliff Williams, John Tiffany, Craig Sperry, Joe Grouse, and Steve Morey. Jim Kelly and David Worth are not in attendance as of yet. So with that, I'd like to open the public hearing. And the first article on our list is a rescinding Article 90 of the 2014 Annual Town Meeting, which authorized Home Rule Petition RE participation in the Barnstable County Retirement System. And the petitioner is Artel Crowley. Would anyone like to speak on this? Yes, sir. Please just step down to the mic and just give your name. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am Art Crowley.
Thank you.
This is new ground for me, so I'm just going to take your direction if I step out of line here, or you need.
Well, hopefully not public comment.
I hope I don't.
No, I think, again, just to describe the intention of your article.
Sure.
And I think that's simple as enough.
I'm looking to rescind Article 90 because I think the town of Nantucket's financial responsibilities associated with providing a new retirement option have not been thoroughly investigated by anyone. I think that the taxpayer needs to know what the potential costs are. I think that, if the new option is something like Social Security or a hybrid plan, that the town's definitely going to have to contribute to something like that. So there's a cost. If it's a 401k type plan, is the town required to contribute? And if not, are they going to have a matching program as an incentive? The other one that was brought up at the November 5th meeting with the Board of Selectmen by Town Council was very interesting on what are the costs of providing accidental disability to employees who choose the new retirement option. I don't think anybody foresaw anything like that. And what would be the costs going forward of a new option? We know what the costs are we know what the costs are from Barnstable County and the unfunded liability. All right, so we know what those are. What are some of the costs going forward? And I think the taxpayer needs to know those things. Several members of this board asked repeatedly for more information over the last year, and got nothing as far as I could see, following back through minutes and whatnot. The Personnel Compensation Committee was supposed to look into it, never did. So, there's more questions than there are answers, and I believe there's a definite cost. And I think the taxpayers need to know what the cost is before we allow something like this to go forward.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any questions from members of the committee? Cliff.
It's more of a point of order. I think you were right as far as the costs, and we vented all that last year, and that's why, and Chairman made the point last time, or 2 meetings ago, that we voted no for the recommendation.
I thought you, and again, we're new to this, so, you know, you have a positive recommendation or a negative recommendation. I thought your recommendation was to take no action.
That's correct.
Well, that's
So it wasn't a negative recommendation.
a nice no.
We're kinder, gentler committee.
I'm looking for a positive recommendation to my art.
Okay.
All right, you good?
Good. Yeah, that's fine. Any other questions? Oh, John, speak into the microphone, please. Thank you.
Just to attach along, you know, the point is that we as a committee here last year voted to take no action, which is a nice way of saying no. So town meeting is this is addressing it to town meeting. Just so you know who you're talking.
No, I understand, but it's also this board's responsibility to investigate these issues.
Yes, it is.
Right.
Yes, it is. And that it is. And we have, as you have mentioned, have looked into the ramifications, and there still are, from at least from my standpoint, there are some questions, but and we certainly want to get those questions answered. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. David? Yep, one more question.
And I apologize for being late, and you've already covered this with, please indulge me. Given that I think that this is potentially something that's optional, that people don't have to participate, is there a fundamental reason not to support something like this? If you have an either-or chance?
The fundamental reason is, what are the costs? We don't know what the costs are of providing. We know what the costs are going forward for Barnstable County. These are additional costs above and beyond that.
Okay, and they're quantifiable. So wouldn't it make sense to sort of drill down and figure out what those costs are and then have the discussion on that basis?
That's what I'm asking for.
Okay.
That's why I'm asking to rescind it until we have better information.
Yeah.
So what?
No.
So
Yeah. So, for example, Barnstable County presented to you,
right.
and they presented as detailed as they could give you on their system, what the problems are and whatnot going forward. I think something like that has to be provided on this new option. There's just far too many questions.
So if that information was there, would your objection still stand? I mean, all I'm trying to ferret out is to me, it's sort of a neutral. I mean, one advantage to having the equivalent of a 401k is that, you know, once you put your money in and it grows, it goes with you. Under my understanding, the way Barnstable works is that you get if you leave after 6 years or 7 years, you get your personal contribution back because that's what you've made, but you don't get any investment return on that,
Right. Well,
on that money. So, I mean, there are those, it's a fairly complicated, but it's...
We have that option now as town employees to participate in a 457, which is just similar to a 401. You know, I mean...
Okay, so if the option's already there, then what's the...
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out. The other side is, I mean, does this new plan, does it even meet the IRS requirements for a alternative retirement plan for Social Security?
Well, I think everybody agrees that it would have to be a contribution to Social Security. I mean, that may be an additional cost to the town.
That's not what, you know, that's not
Maybe I
some of
shouldn't
what
say
I've
everybody.
heard.
Okay.
All right, I've heard other things.
Yes. Okay. No, thank you.
Okay. Further questions or comments, or any comments from the audience?
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. Yes, sir. So please step up. And again, just let us know your name for the record, please.
Hi, Brett Morno, Nantucket Police.
Thank you.
Union president, been a cop out here for 10 years. Mr. Spare, I just wanted to point out that, and everybody just keeps saying this, that, it's not a big deal. It's only for, because the new system that you guys are proposing, or Mr. Spare is proposing, is only for new employees. But the way I understand the Barnstable County is it's a functioning system, so you need money coming in from the bottom, so after guys put in their 30 years, you can retire at the top. My union made a good point that if you cut off the legs of this thing, then you could generate those unfunded liabilities that people keep talking about and bringing up. Everybody says unfunded liabilities, and everybody runs for cover and like, oh yeah, we need a new system, we need a new system. But if you cut off the legs of the Barnstable retirement system, as in new employees don't contribute into it, then you may have those unfunded liabilities. And I would just hope this council would consider that.
Yeah. Thank you. Further comments? Yes, sir.
Hi, Keith Mansfield. I know you brought up the point just a minute ago about, you were asking about, what he said, what Mr. Crowley was saying. The problem that I see with a new system like this, kind of like what Mr. Morneau was saying, is not only is it, if you cut off the legs, you had the question about, people can do it either way. I work at the police department as well, and I'd just like to say that, we have a little bit of a problem with retention and keeping people here. And for young new officers to know that they're going to come to this town and possibly at some point not have a retirement system to put into, people like to know that they're going to be getting a pension, and they like to work and start. Well, if we didn't have a system like this, there would be no draw, no reason for them to come here, at least to the island, for the maybe 4, 5, 6, 7 years that they've worked here. And that would leave us with a very big problem at the police department that I see. Because now we get people that come and work here for a smaller amount of time, but at least they're here. Now, I could see these people saying, well, I don't really like that system. Yes, you could put into a 401 equivalent and take that money, but what generally happens now with the officers, the young officers that come here, they put into Barnstable County Retirement, and that time that they serve through Barnstable County Retirement is transferred to a different agency or retirement system, whether it be the state or any other place. Mm-hmm. And that's a draw, because they do put into a system and they can transfer that funds. It may not be one for one, it may be one for one, but it's a transfer that they can go and they can use. If we don't have that, I see it being a big problem for our department. I can't speak for other departments, but we do have a big turnover. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments? Okay. We'll move along to the next article then, which is the appropriation of a sum of money for food and routine veterinary bills for retired canines. And the sponsor is Keith Mansfield, and I believe, sir, you can step back on up and just describe this for us.
Should have stayed. Hi, Keith Mansfield again.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is just a stipend not to exceed. The amount was $3,500 for any dog that served and retired to the town of Nantucket. Currently, right now, there are no retired dogs for the town of Nantucket, so it wouldn't be funded. I would like to say probably generally a dog works somewhere between 8.5 to 10 years of their life. A normal dog, I will say, doesn't usually live past maybe 14, 15 would be a good life for a service dog after it's retired. So you're talking about maybe 2 to 4 years after a dog retires to fund this. And a full funding would be $3,500. The average cost for a dog per year would be, for just routine vet and expenses, would maybe be, I'd say, about $1,200. Everything goes well, but I just put a sum of money out there. Just, food, I guess, would be about $800 per year, roughly, and just routine vet. And that, and this is for a dog that served the community and the town after they retired to, I guess, just receive some minor benefit. And the rough estimate numbers, I'll just say this is very rough. We have about 12,500 registered voters on the island. If you would divide that up by the full amount of a $3,500 a year per registered voter, it would come out to 28 cents per registered voter per year. And that would only be if it were fully funded. And other years, obviously, like I said, if there are none that are retired at the time, it would cost the town nothing.
Okay. A couple questions for I guess one as a comment is that for a fiscal appropriation that would be approved by this committee or at town meeting, it is really limited for the fiscal year that it's being approved for. So it wouldn't be unless it gets part of an operating budget, it would not be a recurring appropriation. So the way that's worded here. So really, what you're requesting for would be for fiscal year 16, next one. And then the not to exceed $3,500 would also have to be in our motion for the voters at town meeting. But that out of the way, and I have to apologize, I'm not sure I quite understand this. A dog serves 9 years and is retired. Does a dog stay within a member of your force, or do you give that to an individual in the community? I'm just curious.
What routinely happens
Okay.
is that a dog retires to its handler.
To its handler?
Yeah,
Okay,
to its
thank you.
handler. So
Okay.
the person has had the dog for its entire life, and after it retires, the town, say it would be the town of Nantucket, or it happens in any town within the Commonwealth or anywhere else, they usually, for the sum of $1, or they just sign the dog over to the handler. The
Okay.
handler's had it its whole life, and it stays with the handler, and that's
Okay.
it just retires from service.
All righty. And then this would be as a stipend? Would you consider it such that would go to the handler or to the?
Well, I wasn't looking for it for the sum of money. I was looking at it as an appropriation, whereas the dog had food expenses. You would maybe submit the receipt for the food expenses to the town and say, this is what I want. It's not for the sum of money up front. It would be, I spent this on, a yearly routine vet exam.
Okay.
This would be what it costs. That's why I'm saying it wouldn't be fully funded for the whole entire year. It would be something that, if you spent the money, it was there. If everything went well, $1,200 probably
Right.
would be what it would cost, but I put a sum out there.
Okay. And would you keep submitting the bills, say, within the police department? Would be who you submit to, or?
New to me, I wouldn't exactly know
Okay.
how we
I'm
would
looking
do
for
it, but however would make it easier. I mean,
Okay.
it could be done that way.
Okay.
To town administration as like a travel voucher form, something in that
Okay.
form.
All right. Okay. Great. That's helpful for me. Christie, any questions?
Keith, I got a few questions.
Sure.
Is there, as far as you know, is there any after-service funding from departments that might happen in the communities and in the Commonwealth?
Yeah, sure. I actually kind of took this after our training. We're trained through the Plymouth County Sheriff's Department, and this occurs at the Plymouth County Sheriff's Department. They pay for all food and vet expenses for all of their retired service dogs that they have there. So that's the one I did go after.
Okay. Is it safe to say that when a dog is put into service, it is in one department the whole time? Or will a canine switch go from one community to another? I guess what I'm getting at is if a dog serves 2 years here and is 10 years in some other community,
Yeah.
how does that work?
Routinely, the dog comes to a handler and stays with that handler unless something were to happen medically to the handler and or the dog, or we don't just switch out. I mean, a dog is trained to one person. It's not like a car where anybody can drive. A dog is trained. You train with the dog, and you come together, and that's how it works. So I've had my current dog since 2004, and he's been working only with me and nobody else. And that's it. You don't pass him around.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, great. Any other comments from the audience? Oh, yes. Thank you.
Catherine Stover, regular citizen. Happily, I just took a course in service dogs and working dogs at a conference I just got back from. And these dogs, it takes them approximately 14 to 18 months of training to get to the level that we would need them to be. And these dogs have basically learned how to work. And that's all they do. They work. And they work with the handler, and they work for us. And that's all they want to do is serve the handler. So, these dogs put their lives on the line, whether they're here or somewhere else. But I believe that the town owes a good retirement to these officers. And basically, the dogs are officers. So I think this is a fantastic thing, and I'm hoping it goes throughout the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, thank you very much. All right, the next article is a zoning article to amend the zoning map by placing 3 Shadbush Road, currently in the Commercial Industrial District, into the Commercial Neighborhood District. Now, again, for zoning articles, the Planning Board will be providing recommendations at town meeting. I did invite all the sponsors for full transparency, because some of these articles may have some financial implications, and the Finance Committee may choose to comment on them. So with that in mind, I just want to give that disclosure. And the sponsor for this zoning change is Catherine Stover. And again, thank you for, if you want to come up and explain that. And actually, if you'd like, the next 4 articles are sponsored by yourself. If you'd like to take them all as one, that's fine too. We can read them on off. Either way.
Now, remind me, I don't have my folder with me.
This is, well, how about this? There's 2 categories. I see 3 Shadbush Road and 40 and 42 Sparks.
Okay.
Would it be easier to take 3 Shadbush Road, the 2 articles for that, and then go to 40 and 42
Okay.
Sparks? Would that be easier for you?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
3 Shadbush Road, I believe that Andrew told me that what they were thinking about doing is just, in the use chart, taking whatever, how it's zoned now, which I think is CI.
Yes.
Okay, and they were just going to add funeral home to the use chart, which would maybe just nullify this article. The other one is to ask for the town to give a long-term lease to Nantucket Aftercare, and that would be for funeral home purposes, to build a funeral home and run a funeral home for the island.
Okay. And then the 40 and 42 Sparks?
Yes. What I'm asking for is to extend the current R10, which is right next door, and just extend it to this piece of property to the west.
Okay. Very good. Any questions or comments from the committee? Okay. And again, the planning board will be taking this up. We'll be probably spending a little more time with the disposition of the Shadbush and the Sparks Avenue issues. Okay.
I brought both articles forward for, to build a funeral home. It's going to happen, and the people, I figure, can decide whether they want it on Sparks Ave or if they want it out by the VFW. You probably know that we've had 77 deaths so far this year, 2 just this weekend. And it's getting very, very difficult for people. And they really want this to happen. So I figure that the people will decide which piece of property they want.
Thank you. All right. Any other comments on these articles? And again, it's a zoning change for Shadbush Road and Sparks Avenue and disposition of those parcels. Okay. Hearing none, we'll move along. The next article is to raise and appropriate funds to install granite curbing along the Hooper Farm Road sidewalk bike path next time the road is repaved, and the sponsor for this article is Donald Ryder. Anyone like to come in? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Donald Ryder. I live at 6 Dennis Drive.
Thank you.
First, I'd like to thank you for offering this forum for us to be able to come over and
You're welcome.
speak on mine, let you know what we're thinking about. I went and talked to Erica Mooney to find out how to get going on this whole thing, and just coincidentally, Cara from the DPW happened to be in the office, so I was going to draft the article to include, resurfacing, widening the sidewalk/bike path, make some nice improvements over there. It's getting a little shabby. And she indicated that it was kind of in the works, that it was going to be repaved, and the sidewalk was going to be made wider. So I thought I'd just make this a little simpler and just ask for the granite curbing. I think it looked real nice, and I think there's a kind of a safety. I believe there is a big safety issue with the cars right on that road traveling along. It's a very heavily walked and biked road. A lot of residential people there right now, and for myself, if I see granite curbing, I definitely stay away from it with my tires. And I think that safety issue is there. Aesthetically, obviously, it looks a lot better. It looks real nice. I noticed today that it's along Nobodere Farm Road as well, and it's along the sidewalk right in front of this building. So we have some history of having it out in this neighborhood, and I think it would work real well. And with maintenance, I think it's going to last forever. The stuff downtown's been there for 100 years or more. So that's my issue. I thought when they go ahead and do that road, it would be nice to upgrade it and have some granite curving it.
Okay. Now, I have more of a technicality source before we go to questions, is that the source of funding for this article would be to raise and appropriate, and the way they have a word is next time it is paved. If that's not going to be done in the fiscal year of 16, this article passing would be more of a sense of the meeting, because we can't tie up funds for future years. We're limited to the next fiscal year. So, and I'm not sure what DPW has in plan, but this is just, again, talking in generalities.
I was led to believe that there was something in the works.
Okay, they haven't shared that. If that's the case, that's great. Then
and that's why I worded it the way I did. If that's not the case, we may need to try to amend this at town meeting.
No, that's fine. Well, just with that information, I'll look into that, and then hopefully we find out. But just that's from our issue. That's when we vote on that. That's our issue. But if there is something in the works, the DPW director certainly will fill us in accordingly.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. And you ready for some questions? Okay, Craig.
Mr. Ryder, in your research, has any figures come forward as how much this would cost?
No, actually. I talked to Vector Paving, and he sent me in the direction of Silvio, I think the gentleman's name is, that works at the DPW, who's the engineer. I've called him several times, and he hasn't called me back. So I kind of hit a dead end with that. I did visit the meeting of I think it's called the Pedestrian and Bicycle Safety Committee that meets over next door at 2 Fairgrounds. And one of the gentlemen, I'm not sure if it was the fellow that was the chairman of the committee, he suggested it might be a difference of between like $3 to $10. $3 maybe for curbing, $3 or $4 for berming, asphalt berming, and the granite would maybe be up around 10. And I got a wheel and measured off approximately how much granite it would include. Skipping the driveways, it's about 2,200 feet. So if those numbers are right, you can do the math, but
it helps.
I'm not sure if they are.
Good. Cliff.
Mr. Ryder, are you considering the whole road? Because I know once you get halfway down the road, past probably Rames's and the rest of it, it kind of sets off a lot more, whereas it's closer towards the rotary.
The 2,200 feet that I measured out started at Newtown Road, because that's where the granite curbing stops from the new post office rotary. And then I went up to where, I think it's at Dias Lane or whatever, where it branches off, and Hooper Farm turns over and goes, over Dias, I think it's Dias Court or Dias Way or something. So, yeah, right at that property right there where it branches. That would be, it's kind of the end of where the bike path sidewalk is now.
Okay.
So that's as far as I was considering it being done.
All right. Okay. Further questions? Okay. Any comments from the audience? All right, well, thank you very much, sir. You may be hearing from me at that point I brought up, but we'll look into that and find out.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Okay. Next article is to amend sewer bylaws to include parcels on Clifton and Burnell Streets in the Sconset Sewer District. And Erica Mooney is the sponsor. Eric, would like to say a few words? All right. Well, how about that? You can stay sitting. Anybody have any questions? Okay. In a general statement, as with any sewer bylaw changes, the Finance Committee will wait until we hear from the recommendations from town administration, which includes the planning director, the Department of DPW, and I think the health inspector, I believe. Okay, good. So, welcome. Okay. Any comments on that? All right. Next article is another amendment of the sewer bylaw to include parcels on Tacoma Way and Mishemi Lane in the town sewer district, and this is sponsored by Alfred Terry Sanford. And would anyone like to comment on that? Oh, yes, sir.
Hi.
Hi.
Ralph for Terry Sanford.
Oh, welcome.
I don't know if there's much explanation to that, but this is a parcel of land that's been subdivided into 4. The proposal is to add it into the sewer district. It was recommended by the planning board as part of the subdivision process that this be done. It's adjacent to the immediate existing sewer district, and I think that's it. It should be pretty straightforward. I think it makes sense geographically, makes sense for the property, and I assume financially it probably makes sense for the town.
Okay. Any questions on this? Cliff? Yeah.
Usually when we talk about sewer, we talk about the expense and whether there's betterments or who's going to pay for it or how we're going to pay for it. So I guess that's a question on
Okay.
both these, or at least this one.
So you mean specifically to install the lines and
Yeah,
infrastructure?
do you know the expense or how it's? Yeah.
The dry line's actually been put in the new street, and the proposals, or what I'm expecting is that I, as developer of a piece of property, will run it to the existing sewer, which is just down Tacoma Way. So it would be paid for in full, including when the new houses are built, the sewer connection fees by the new owners.
Okay. Yep. All right, thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. And again, just as I said earlier, this committee will wait on the recommendations of town administration. All right. Thank you. The next article is to amend the zoning map by placing certain parcels on Fairgrounds and Newtown roads currently in the residential 10, R10 district, into the commercial neighborhood CN district. And the sponsor is Irvin Fred Holgate. And anyone like to comment on this article? Yes, sir.
My
Thank
name
you.
is Irvin Holgate.
Thank you.
I put this article in to try and recoup financial loss of the properties that are listed. All of us have been in these properties almost 50 years each. I don't see much of a change in it becoming a full commercial area. But in my own case, the police access driveway has destroyed the value of my property, where a representative of Denby Real Estate has made the comment, your property is a very hard sell. Once you put the fire station in there, it's going to destroy the properties for residential use.
Okay.
I would expect it to remain very much like Old South Road is from Milestone to Fairgrounds. That side, small businesses and offices. It's basically a financial issue, and it may stop some opposition to the proposed fire station, because it definitely is going to increase traffic and noise.
Okay. Yes, it will.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Any comments on this article? Okay. The next article, then, is to amend the Chapter 125-2 of the Town Code, banning the sale and/or use of any type of balloon to be inflated with any type of lighter-than-air gas. And the sponsor is Scott Leonard. I did forward some information that Mr. Leonard sent that will also be part of the public record there today for review. But would anyone like to talk on this article, please?
I'll answer questions if you need it.
Okay, and you are, sir?
I am. I'm Scott Leonard.
Ah,
Thank you.
okay, welcome,
Right.
thank you.
And I also have a hard copy here. I
Okay.
didn't send you the email today, but shall I pass a hard copy to the table?
How about just, I don't know if that's necessary unless anyone would like to see it. How about just an overview? From my standpoint, I'm kind of curious on what you're trying to achieve.
Well, we're trying to do three things, really. From my perspective as being involved in marine mammals, it's trying to lower mortality amongst marine life, which goes from great whales down to birds and turtles. But there's also a helium depletion issue, which most people don't think about, helium being the second most common element in the universe, as far as we know. And medicine uses helium, military uses helium, and helium used in balloons is becoming a wasteful use of a very hard-to-get product. The other issue is the simple hard pollution issue, and that is if you go out and you're on the Nantucket Clean Team, which I am, one of the major issues on the beach or in our open areas is balloons, littering. Now, those balloons don't necessarily come from Nantucket, though plenty do, because we release plenty on the island. Those balloons come from as far away as Pennsylvania, Ohio. We've had balloons. And so our balloons, when we release them, go up and come down somewhere and float out into the ocean and end up someplace else, possibly in the gut of a great whale. And in the letter, I've included a lot of links and a lot of information that you can go to. We just had a whale on the beach here. It wasn't, I was sort of had my fingers crossed there'd be a balloon in its belly. Sadly, his belly was completely empty because it was dying from a parasite. But so that's the issue. The issue of having lighter than air gas balloons that go up and come down somewhere. They're a lot of fun. My favorite movie as a kid was The Little Red Balloon. But they're becoming a very large problem and creating a credible amount of marine mortality.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Any questions? Greg?
Scott, it's beyond just the Mylar balloons, it's all balloons that you're
It's
including?
all balloons. Even the biodegradable plastic balloons take up to 6 months to biodegrade in the ocean. And the salt water seems to keep them from biodegrading a little bit more slowly. We're not trying to ban balloons also. Remember, if you want to fill a balloon up with air, we're not trying to ban that. So if you want to have balloons on your fence that aren't filled with a lighter than air gas, cool. If you want to have a water balloon fight, great. Those cause other issues, and there's a pollution involved with that too, but we're not onto that at this stage. What we want to do is keep things from floating up into the atmosphere and coming down and causing havoc.
Okay. David?
Have you given any thought on how you might regulate or police this issue?
Indeed, if it's as in the article, if it's an offense, the peace officer can regulate that as he would any other pollution. Obviously, you're not going to stop everybody from releasing a balloon, but it puts a kernel of thought into people's minds. The other issue is in terms of regulation, is once people are aware that they're not supposed to do it, I think you're going to find a lot of folks, and aware of the issues that they cause, because a lot of people don't go that far. It's fun, it's nice, let's have a release, and they don't think about the consequences. So part of what we're talking about, and I've got 10 organizations signed on to a letter, and we're talking about how we educate the kids in particular about balloons and about what the results of letting balloons go are.
Thank you. Any other questions? Chris?
Kind of what you just said, but I was going to ask how you plan on educating the community that this is what article you're going to bring. I'm just worried that if you go to town meeting and people hear this for the first time, they're going to not think much of it. So I think it would be helpful to have some sort of process to educate the community that this is what you'd like to do and the reasons why, so that when we go to a town meeting, there could be a good discussion on it and it not just go on the wayside.
It's one of the things I'm working on with these organizations is how we can make a comprehensive, it doesn't have to be in-depth, but a comprehensive, specifically targeted kids program, because they're often the ones, and event organizers. I've spoken with Amy from town, and we've discussed this issue, and she understands it. It will be something that requires a bit of collaboration with other groups, and even groups that aren't signed on, like the Mariah Mitchell Association, understand the problem and have good outreach into the schools. I've done some of my own stuff with the schools through the Nantucket Marine Mammal Conservation Program, and this has been one of the topics that we discuss. Again, I think also once it becomes an article that people have heard about, rather than just at this meeting, people start to put two and two together and say, okay, you don't want a beer can thrown out your window, you don't want a balloon released into the air. That's basically what I want to try and get people to comprehend.
Cliff?
Is there any other towns you know of that have banned balloons already?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's about 6 states that have banned balloons. Mostly that's, and let me put it this way, there's 6 states that have banned the release of balloons. California, for the Mylar reason, a Mylar gets into a power line and it can short out the line. Provincetown would be our neighbor, and they're the ones that have one of the best written laws. And I believe I have in that letter this is their bylaw. 13.2.14, prohibition of helium-filled balloons, the sale, use, and distribution of helium-filled balloons, both for public and private use, is prohibited. Pretty simple. They are surrounded by a national seashore, which has influenced that. We're kind of in that same category. I mean, we have 50% of our island saved for conservation purposes. We're surrounded by a lovely ocean, our role model community. I think that it suits who we are.
Further questions? Comments from the audience? All right. Well, thank you very much.
Right.
Appreciate that. Thank you. All righty. The next article is to continue to maintain the present and existing retirement plans and systems for all municipal employees in the same manner as it has been in the past. And the sponsor is Mr. Robert Bates. And anyone like to talk on this article? Okay. Hearing none, move on then to the next article, which is the fiscal year 2016 Community Preservation Act budget transfers. There's also the fiscal year 2016 appropriation for the Community Preservation Act, and to another additional article to authorize borrowing of $800,000 under the CPA program to fund a grant to the Housing Assistance Corporation for completion of infrastructure for Phase 2 of Sakin's Path. I call these three together because the Finance Committee has already heard a presentation from the Community Preservation Committee. And would anyone here in the audience like to comment on either of these articles? Okay, hearing none, we'll move ahead to amending the zoning map by placing 3 parcels on North Water Street currently in the LC district into the CDT district, and this is sponsored by Michelle Langlois. I hope I'm saying that right. Yeah. I am. Oh, okay. You're nodding your head. Would you like to come and talk, please? Or Mr. Cohen. Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Stephen Cohen from
Thank you.
Warrant article drafters. I think that the LC and the CDT have some overlap. The CDT is actually, I would think, much more appropriate for this area. And in fact, when the town created the CDT a few years ago, it ran up to basically these properties. And there was a warrant article last year, or an attempt by the town last year to do a blanket redesign of downtown. And part of that would have changed this area. And there were some objections to that. I think one of them was that it would have made a lot of primary dwellings pre-existing non-conforming uses. And so that's one of the reasons why that was withdrawn. But the 3 properties here are all residential, are all commercial guest houses. There are no dwellings in this area. So one of the problems with the CDT was that it's not really supposed to be for dwellings. But these are currently commercial businesses, and it would benefit the town to have it stay that way, to have them stay as inns. It would provide for different setbacks and ground cover and height and parking and other things that are designed more appropriately for the town. The limited commercial district is one of the original districts and really doesn't make a lot of sense as a blanket commercial district and doesn't really apply to most properties downtown, whereas this was specifically designed for downtown use, and we think it would be appropriate for these properties.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for any member of the committee? None? Very good. Thank you, sir. Okay. Moving along, next article. In fact, the next 4 is the same sponsor, so we'll go take them one at a time. The first one is an appropriate a sum of money for the creation of parking on public way, Cathcart Road, and the sponsor is Thomas Barata. And Is he here? He is here. Oh, good. Please step on down and introduce your article, please.
Thomas Barretta, and it's 14 Toshma Lane. Self-explanatory. Parking on the north side of Cathcart Road. There's a map that was attached. It pretty much lays it out saying where between the parcels. There you go. Northbound side of that lane, create a parking area, possible travel lane, widen it out at the discretion of town. Basically, try to get more parking out there. It's a zoo in the summer. You can't park. Every car that we can get out of town, and there's one less car parked downtown for the boats. It's at the end of the mooring field. You used to be able to park on the beach. Can't park on the beach anymore. So you can't really unload and then go find a parking space because there's no parking.
Okay. Questions? Go ahead.
Does this actually need an article versus just a request to the Board of Selectmen to go over there and, use the DPW to?
Well, the problem is that I believe it requires an article because you have to raise the funds. DPW doesn't really have money to clear cut it and bring it back, and it's time and effort, and if you request it to get it into the budget, then it's somewhere in the budget and we'll get to it. But whereas this one's more of a, we can get it done because we've allocated.
Okay.
Christie?
Thomas, do you know if the area where you're talking expanding into, is it public land or is it private?
That's a public road, 40 feet wide, boundary to boundary. The road is 12 feet right now, but it's 40 feet legally. And it's a public road all the way to the water.
Okay.
So we own it. As far as the town, we own it.
Is that all, how far up is that the case, the whole way?
The whole road is a
Okay.
public road, and if you go out there, as soon as you turn onto the road, there's a stone marker that says public way, all the way to the end.
Okay. Further questions? Joe?
Just a bit of clarification.
Sure.
Where's the other end of Cathcart?
It starts at Brewster Road. If you go out Monomoy Road, and when Monomoy takes a left, you take a right and go down and around the swamp, and then the road splits, and there's a concrete or a pillar that says public way, and it goes to the left. The road there, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago, somebody sold a house out there or something, and part of the deal was they had to widen the road. So one day Toscana went out there and just basically clear cut the sides and widened the road out to somebody's driveway. But the rest of it wasn't touched. So if you drive out there and look, you'll be like, oh, this road's really wide and it looks really nice. And then as soon as you get past that property that's sold, it's just 12 feet wide.
Yeah, that's private.
Yeah, and so,
Yeah.
and land banks, there's a real issue right now because it seems to be a good loading and unloading area for the mooring field. People like to go out there in the summer, and then they want to unload their car, get it onto the boat, but they can't really find a place to park because they get boxed in, so they want to leave their car on the beach. So people don't want it on the beach. Land bank doesn't want the cars on the beach. Nobody, the neighbor to that north side has closed it off, so you can't go on their part at the end of the road. So there's really nothing to do. So it's crazy because you really can't get that many cars out there. And it's a perfect spot to access the mooring field. And just so you know, I don't have a boat. I don't have anything to do with this as far as personal use, other than if somebody called me and said, hey, you want to go out fishing or something, I know I can get out there and park.
Okay. Thank you. Further, yes, Greg?
Do you know, Thomas, is 22, is that land bank property?
The one on the end is land bank, and from what I understand, the family has life rights, and they don't really, they're working on a plan to try to do something to create a little bit more parking there, but they don't want to be overly drastic on creating a larger parking area. They want to try to do something within the realm of what's there, but nothing drastic. And they think it, or I can't speak for them, but it would go hand in hand with what they're trying to do.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? Any comments from the audience? Okay, if you don't mind standing.
No
and
problem.
Next one there is the authorize the conveyance of an easement and public right-of-way for beach access on Everett Street, which is a paper street, to the Nantucket Islands Land Bank, and to appropriate a sum of money for construction of parking area improvements. And you can, if you want to summarize that for us, great.
There was a piece of there's a property out there by the name, or was by the name of Divine Property. It was recently sold and recently built on. Russell Street used to go down. Used to be able to access the beach around it. There used to be an access way there. That recently was closed off. And as a result, some of that property is going to be transferred to the owner through a yard sale program. So the dotted road that you see that exists there that comes down Russell Street is no longer. There's a split rail fence pretty much on that property line of that 17,000 square feet. That's going to be transferred to the owner through the yard sale, so there's no access to the beach from that way. So it was thought, and in front of the split rail fence, where it says split rail fence, there's a airport fence there. It's about 3 or 4 feet from each other. People used to park there and go down and around and try to access to go in front of the runway. After speaking with the airport, really not sure what's going to happen with this. It was an idea to try to make it happen, to get access there. The closest public access to there is about half a mile down the beach, and that's going to be limited because they're going to be giving that away for yard sale, except they're going to have a 12-foot access road, but parking is going to be a questionable issue. That's the closest point to Surfside on that side of the island, so it's the starting point, and then you can work your way down the beach when you're fishing, and just basically trying to get beach access is what it is.
Okay. Questions? Excuse me, hearing none, we did have, town council was in last week and triaged the articles, and I'll just read you, going to be summing it up, what town council summarized. The article is missing some key words regarding the purposes for which the land is currently held. Defect can be corrected in the motion. So what that means is that this committee supports your idea with the positive motion, is that we will reward this, so to make it put in legal form.
Okay.
Okay. Just
Would
make you aware of
I
that.
be able to review what your legal form is, or is it going to be when it's printed, it's printed?
It's printed. Well, you certainly can review. We're very transparent about that.
Okay.
The best way, from my standpoint, to answer that is we listen to what town council tells us,
Okay.
and but you can certainly be active with discussions with them.
Okay, that's fine.
Legally, if that helps you. Okay. All right. Hearing no other questions, any comments from the audience? Okay. The next is to authorize the conveyance of an easement and public right-of-way for beach access on Mataquecham Valley Road to the Nantucket Islands Land Bank or other governmental body or nonprofit entity.
Sister article to the brother article.
Okay. So pretty much the same. And the same technicality, as I mentioned earlier, applies here too. Okay. All right. Any questions on that? All right. And then we'll move.
Just so you know, if you can
yes, sir.
just go back on that photo, if you can just, that's the only way to get down to Everett Street, and that's the airport fence, and the split rail is the Vine fence. And that's theoretically town of Nantucket owned property. Even though it says private property, it's pretty much town owned. And so people have been trying to traverse that to get to the beach. They used to traverse along the airport fence, but since August, they can no longer do that, and there's really no way to get around from the upland side laterally from Surfside.
Okay. All right. Hearing no other comments, we'll move on to...
Chairman, I'm going to recuse myself from this.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's fine. And this is in 4 parts, and I'll read each part. Number 1, transfers a portion of Mill Hill Park to the Board of Selectmen for the purpose of a long-term lease for medical purposes. 2, authorizes the Board of Selectmen to enter into a long-term lease with the Nantucket Cottage Hospital. 3, authorizes a home rule petition to release the Article 97 restriction. And 4, dedicates a portion of water company land, map 54, parcel 45, for park purposes. And again, if you want to summarize that up for us, please.
This warrant article was written when Wears Valley was in play in regard to discussion for the hospital. Everybody that I spoke with in regard to this didn't want that to happen. I was writing this article. Town was aware of I was writing this article. Everybody knew I was writing this article. Then Wears Valley came off the table because everybody was not in agreement with it. And then all of Mill Hill came on the table, was requested. And everybody didn't agree with that either. And I was still in the process of writing this article as it is. And I submitted it due to the fact that the town can submit theirs up until January 21st. So they have plenty of time. The hospital, through the town, on behalf of the hospital, by the town, they can submit their article. And this was submitted as a compromise in case they did it. If they didn't, then so be it. If they do, then there's another option on the table.
Okay. All right. Questions? Cliff?
When you say you submitted it, is the hospital, I missed that part, in any way talks, encouraged, just to...
On this?
Yeah.
No, I did this one I just did this in case they came back and asked for a full 6 acres, and they wanted the full 6 acres, and the town submitted a warrant article for town meeting that said, let's give them all 6 acres. This was a compromise to say, here's 2 acres with strings attached to protect the town. A lot of people that I spoke with in regard to this, and that spoke to me in regard to this, was they don't want to give it outright, number 1. Number 2, they don't want it used for anything other than what it's intended for. And number 3, they wanted to make sure that there was some protection for the town. So hence the reason why it's a lease, long-term. Hence the reason why it says no housing, no administrative, other than 15%. Now, that does not classify nurses' stations or anything like that. That's medical. Lab technicians, that's medical. Administrative, paper pushing and stuff like that. That's what that means. And the stipend was just something that would make the taxpayers feel that they were getting something back. I mean, that was just, it's a token gift back to the town.
Okay. Further questions or comments? Oh, David, yes?
So, Thomas, if I understand you correctly, if the town puts forth an article supported by the hospital, you would not withdraw this article?
It depends on what people want to do. If people want to compromise, they can call it and do it. If the hospital puts something forward that's equivalent or not as drastic as what they want or as large, a lot of people don't want Mill Hill touched. They don't want to come to the top of York Street and see it. And this is a compromise to what it is. So if they want to work within the parameters, we can work something out. If they want to go with their own article, then that's fine. People don't have to vote for it. They can have a choice.
Okay, thank you. Further questions or comments? Hearing none. Any questions or comments from the audience? Okay. As this goes, this is similar description as I mentioned previously.
I had a question in regard to it.
Oh.
'Cause the town council's spreadsheet that was supplied as part of the packet said something in regard to the property wasn't properly described as to what was, if you'd like to read it, that would be great, and then I'll answer it.
Okay. The question marks, what I'll be reading is what town council triaged on this specific article. In regards to number one, the transfers a portion of Mill Hill Park to the Board of Selectmen, town council commented, article is not precise enough in its description of the land to be leased. The number two, motion will have to identify the parcel to be leased or leave the final determination to the Board of Selectmen. And the third comment is article improperly limits the authority to lease to a named entity potentially in violation of General Law C-30B. Okay, that's the comment.
The C-30B part, I realize that. It would have to go out to bid, I believe. There's issues in regard to trying to do that. However, I believe if you write the RFP in such a way that it could probably only work for one entity, theoretically. As far as the land, I mean, it's pretty well described as what it is. It's 100,000 square feet. It's actually, if you really think about it, it's 110,000 square feet because it also includes the paper road, or the road that's next to it. So, but it basically says 200 feet off of this boundary line, split this one. It's written out so that you can actually draw a picture by the wording. So that's what I want, I didn't know how to say it and split.
No, I think that your intention is, I can see where the discrepancy is. We will handle this article in two ways. One, consultation with the planning department. And also, we're going to see how the wisdom of the board is when the warrant is released at the end of January.
Okay.
That will really dictate and influence how we proceed.
Okay.
Okay? That being said, and this goes for all three of the four articles, when town council and/or the planning department further define, further analyze, and make recommendations, we'll certainly let you know. When we discuss these articles, they will be on the agenda specifically, so when you're paying attention, just in case you don't hear from us, which is...
Oh, no, don't worry, I'll be...
Well, no, I'm just letting you know. I'm going to be specific. That I will do.
That's fine. No,
So I want to be sure you don't fall through the cracks.
Yeah, no. Guaranteed that's not going to happen.
Okay. All right. So I think then we're all set. Have any other comments on? All right. Well, thank you very much. And I'm sure we'll be in touch soon, or sooner than later. The next article is an appropriation of funds not to exceed $11,600 to replace 2 servers for the archival Laserfiche system. And the sponsor is Catherine Flanagan Stover. And if you'd like to come down and chat with us.
Happy to answer any questions.
Well, how about a description of what you'd like it for? I'm a little curious.
Well, the Laserfiche system, as you probably remember, is the system that we use to archive all our records. So everything that we've had restored and repaired, so that would be like town meeting records, back through the 300 years of our history. So most of these things have been repaired and then microfilmed, and then the microfilm is transferred to a TIFF image, and then the TIFF image is put into this Laserfiche system so that we can do a search. So if somebody calls up and says, we want to know about every single instance of a barking dog, you just type in barking dog, and every town meeting, every selectmen's meeting, every complaint or anything that's been filed with the town comes up, and then you can search and narrow about, which exactly it is that you're looking for. So this has saved an incredible amount of research time going through books and pages and things like that. We get requests a lot from town council, especially when there's litigation. They're asking us for lists of articles or maybe quotes or something from a town meeting or a selectman's minutes or something. So it's a fantastic system, and we use it every day, all day. And the life for most of these servers is usually 2 to 4 years, maybe 5 years. And ours has come to the end of its life, so we have to replace them. I went to the CPC to get funds, and also for the archival shelving system for our new vault. And they said these are things that should not come out of CPC, but they should come from the town. So I've already tried for the shelving. Well, we're not there yet. So, but for the Laserfish, that's what we need for the service to keep using it.
Okay. Questions? David?
So Catherine, is this for servers or for the system?
It's servers. All this information is on servers so that we can search
Right.
and do
Okay, but it's
everything
not,
we need to.
you're not asking for money for the software to...
Oh, no, we've got that.
Okay,
We
you've got
own
that.
it.
So this is just the hardware.
Yes.
And these will speed up the process? I mean, have they died?
No, not yet.
So why
No,
wouldn't,
we're
why
hoping
wouldn't they be
to-
just part of a normal capital replacement
Well,
schedule
because
for
It's
our
not a
hardware?
capital item. It's, I think $50,000 is the ceiling for a
Don't
capital
Do
item.
we expense all our computers? I think we
Yeah,
capitalize
I'm a
them.
little bit-
Brian,
Yeah.
we capitalize computers or expense them? Servers.
I mean, for capital articles, it's a limit, but we capitalize it on the asset, on the fixed asset. So this wouldn't necessarily.
Brian, do me a favor. I'm sorry. Could you come up to the microphone? No offense. Just for people at home. You're next.
This wouldn't necessarily rise to the 50,000 limit is for what is on the capital expenditures
Right.
that goes before
Right.
the capital program committee. But anything that is capitalizable with a useful life of the 3 years or more for computers or whatever is capitalized in our fixed asset software, yes.
Right, but why wouldn't it just, as a part of a department, show up as, we do a replacement every 4 years, 6 years, whatever your schedule is? I mean, I guess I'm wondering why it's sort of coming out of...
That'd be more of an interaction between the town clerk and the IT department than, that this is a route she's chosen to take, I guess, I would say.
Well,
versus talking-
the IT people told me that I should probably think about doing this because,
Okay, well,
yeah, they're,
I wasn't privy to those conversations, so I can't make
All right.
any.
John.
Great,
Jim.
thank you.
John, then Jim. Microphone? Thank you.
My question was going to be that this, I'm on the capital program committee, and we one of the things we hear is from the IT department. We hear about all the service, other than the police station, that's done separately for other reasons. I don't understand why this just wouldn't be part of that.
this is not part of the IT department's computer system. This is limited to the town clerk.
What's that?
Yeah.
Jim?
I guess I had the same question, because I know we buy servers every year, and I assume it's for all the uses of the town. And I'd ask Catherine, who manages your IT, who has responsibility for this? You have a separate IT staff, or is that the IT
No,
department
this-
of the town?
Our Laserfish system is maintained by General Code Incorporated. They're the people that also do our codification for our town code. And they're the ones that either upgrade or maintain or educate us on how to use the
So it's not done by
Laserfish
the,
system.
so your IT
It's not a town-
needs are
it's-
not managed by the IT department?
No, not at all, no.
Okay.
Okay. Further questions or comments? David?
So do you have a service contract with this company?
We do.
And it doesn't include them
It does not.
maintaining?
No, servers are separate.
So
Servers.
why, could we get a
need
service?
server.
I understand. Could we get a
Okay.
service contract that had the servers included in it?
I don't think so, because I think that's something that has to go out to bid. I don't believe, they don't provide them. We have to get them from another party. So we have to get them, I believe, I think HP is the person that IT suggested that we get them from.
Okay, I mean, I'd be curious, I mean, it seems, I mean, most people that supply sort of software as a service, which I guess I would classify it, are providing the hardware so that the customer doesn't have to burden themselves with it. And you obviously pay for it on a monthly basis, as you know, but I'm just surprised they don't offer that as part of the service.
Because they're not computer people in terms of providing servers. They have the proprietary software that you would need to use this program. They don't have the, they're not the ones that build servers and do all that stuff. They don't have anything to do with that. They just give us the software for the program.
Do they update the software regularly?
When we purchase it, yeah.
When you purchase the update?
We have to purchase it, yeah. But usually it lasts us probably 3 or 4 years, maybe 5 years, and then we go for an upgrade.
I mean, I'm asking this question because you can, from Amazon, purchase cloud storage for next to nothing to store all of this stuff without having to go and buy your own servers. And that's, you know, that is for, and I don't know what you guys do, but a big organization. I mean, so you could purchase the space off of Amazon instead of having to go with a capital request that buys hardware, that the town has to buy the hardware for next to nothing. I mean, it's a highly competitive business these days, and it would strike me that if your software supplier doesn't do it, that it's the kind of thing that potentially is worth looking into rather than having to go to a, you know,
I can understand your question, and I can understand your why you would ask that. Me personally, I don't trust the cloud 100%. I use the cloud, but I also have a hard backup. So, I mean, if something happens to the cloud, if we get attacked by terrorists or whatever, I still got my hard drive on my computer that's all backed up. But that would be a question I'd have to ask IT because I have no knowledge of any of that.
Okay.
All right. Further questions or comments? Okay, any comments from the audience? All right, moving on to the next article. It's an appropriation of funds not to exceed $49,000 to purchase custom archival shelving system for the town clerk's new vault. And again, Catherine Flanagan-Stover is sponsored, and please want to summarize that for us, please.
I came to you 2 years ago to get a transfer of funds when we first moved into our new office. And we're very grateful for the space. And we have a fairly good-sized vault, but it is very, very wasteful of space. We can't put our restored documents, for the most part, the books and the volumes and things, over into the new vault because the shelving isn't appropriate. We have really heavy volumes that are probably, some of you have seen them, they're about this big, and they weigh probably 5 to 10 pounds. They can't be put upright because it will break the bindings, and they're not supposed to be stacked more than 2 or 3 deep. And right now we have shelves where 2 or 3 of them are stacked, and then there's this much wasted space. So when we had our other 2 vaults done, they were custom built for these volumes, and then custom built shelves that roll so that there's no wasted space. And it tripled the size of our vault, essentially, or the use of our vault. And so these rollers, their shelves are about that far apart, but they have these special rollers that support the books so that they don't, so that they're stored the way they're supposed to be stored. And then we have all our other books, our vital books and our town meeting books and our minutes books and selectmen's and the county commissioner's books and all those types of things. And they're all in special volumes, and they're all on these powdered, particular powder enamel that goes on the shelves that resists moisture and resists molding and resists a whole bunch of other things. But anyway, they're archival quality shelving, and it's not stuff you get at Home Depot, and it's not stuff that the DPW could build out of wood. It's archival shelving.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Okay. All right, any comments from the audience? All right, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Moving along, next articles are zoning articles, 3 in a row, all by the same sponsor. First is amend zoning bylaw by adding the definition of ownership, and the sponsor is Arthur Reed. And Mr. Reed, thank you. You can step up to the microphone, please.
Thank you. As you pointed out earlier, these, as zoning articles, are going to get their real in-depth review at the planning board. But just very briefly on each of these. On ownership, there's been some confusion and some case law that I've been discussing with Andrew Vorse, and we think has come down in a very harsh way that would be alleviated by determining ownership as being record title to land rather than having to go off the public record in order to determine underlying ownership. You want to take these one at a time? They're all separate articles, so why don't
Yeah, why don't we
see
do
if
one
anyone
at a
has any
time, if you don't mind?
comments on
That'd probably be easier, thank you. The first is the ownership.
Right.
All right.
The next one, as I have it here, is the elevation height of structures that are in flood zones. As to that, we've run into the problem that under the new FEMA regulations as to flood zones and velocity zones, that the elevation is now considerably higher than is required for the first floor than has been the case in the past. And there have been cases, some in the commercial downtown district, where the increase in height of a building can be done by special permit. And in adjacent districts, also involving waterfront properties, there's no provision for that, so it winds up becoming a variance. Discussing it with Andrew, and again, on each of these articles, there's a certain amount of broadness so that there would be the ability to do modifications later on in the motion without going outside the scope of the article. The concept that we have here is that ordinarily the height that's permitted for a building is 30 feet. And in a normal situation, you have the first floor at an elevation of about 2 feet above grade. So what we're saying is that you can have an elevation of 28 feet above the first floor elevation that you're required to have. And that would apply in all districts where, once again, flood issues have been promulgated by FEMA as being applicable to the property. The third article, which is adding a definition of municipal. This comes from a very specific case. The Board of Appeals was asked to consider some issues relating to a playground that the land bank is proposing out in Sconset, Codfish Park, which I've been representing the land bank in connection with on the permitting issues. And an issue had been raised as to whether that was a permitted use as a municipal use. The Board of Appeals asked Town Council for an opinion on it, and George Pucci, in fact, opined that the activities of the land bank constituted municipal uses. The nature of the land bank being such as it is, elected by the citizens of Nantucket and having a close relationship to the town government, even though it is a separate agency, existing under a state statute. So in order to eliminate the question by providing a definition, we're simply providing that that municipal uses for purposes of zoning only, this is just a zoning definition, would include the town or the county or any department or agency thereof, and specifically including the Nantucket Land Bank.
Thank you.
That's the story, and again, any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the members? David?
Arthur, just curious why Andrew and the planning department aren't putting these forth as zoning changes and why they're coming through you?
It's not at all impossible that some will come from there. We've been discussing them, and in any event, I wanted to see that these articles went forward in any event. If they have, then they may want to do motions to be based upon my articles, or they may want to put in individual articles of their own. But at least this way, we're making sure that they will be in the warrant and will be able to be discussed. I'm putting them forward, not Andrew, but in all cases, I've been discussing them with Andrew and getting input from him.
So on the Sconset, excuse me, Jim, on the Sconset, you do represent the land bank. Do you have any other, are you representing somebody else in these other two, particularly the one on the height?
The one on the height comes out of a case that we've been handling, but that case will be determined before this would come to a head in any event. The ownership, I'm not involved with anyone on that. I've just observed it in operation.
Okay, thanks.
Jim?
Could you repeat that? You were very eloquent on the ownership, but you lost me. So how does that clarify or make things easier?
Basically, what we're saying is that when you're considering ownership for purposes of zoning, you look at the record title. Rather than looking at the question of who the beneficial owners are underneath the record title, which can result in a lot of confusion, and there have been some cases that have had some
And that's the way, what you just said
bizarre
first is the way
results.
you want it to be.
We want it to be
But
determined.
it's not that way now.
It's not that way.
Oh, okay, okay.
It's
But
been
that seemed
subject
like
to
the way it
various
should be.
interpretations, as a matter of
Oh,
fact.
okay, all right, okay, thank you.
Okay. Further questions? All right. Thank you very much. I know the planning board will be taking these up, and we'll be waiting for the recommendations.
Absolutely. Thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome. Okay. Next is again, there's a few articles looped together here. First is special legislation to amend the Historic District Commission Act by repealing Chapter 338 of the Acts of 2014, which provides for both elected and appointed members of the HDC, and the sponsor is Linda Williams. And if you'd like to say anything on this, come up and chat. You might as well come up. You have a few of them here.
This can't be taken by itself. It has to be taken with one, I believe. I don't know what order these are in.
Well, you can tap out this if you. Well, this is the first one that we have. The second one is the special legislation to amend Section 3 of the Historic District Commission Act as follows: allows members of the HDC to be paid, deletes the requirement that they be resident taxpayers of the town.
Oh, that's the whole rewrite. This is totally out of order. I don't know who set the order. There are two that go together, which I can't read it without my glasses, but the two that go together, there are four in order, but there are 3 HDC, 1 sewer. One is to repeal what was done last year and change the enabling legislation to allow the selectmen to appoint the alternates like they do the planning board and to leave the 5 regular members to be elected.
Okay. Did you want to elaborate on that? The floor is yours.
I'll say what I said last year.
Okay.
To think that people are going to be jumping out of the woodwork somehow to get on the HDC is ludicrous. It was ludicrous last year. It's ludicrous now. But if somebody really wants to get on the HDC, like they really want to get on the planning board, either they have the courage or convictions and run against somebody, and most of the time there's only one of us running, or nobody running. We've had a couple of alternate seats that have just sort of floated in the breeze for some years because nobody wants to do it. But if somebody really wants to get on the HDC, and the learning curve on the HDC is humongous. This is not for dilettantes. This is for people that are just going to have to meet 10 hours a week, take viewings on the weekend, every single week. We don't take time off in the summer. They're going to have to learn the process. They're going to have to learn building with Nantucket in mind. They're going to have to be able to read a set of plans. You cannot come onto the HDC and have no clue, because it isn't going to serve the public at all, or the rest of the commission, or the process. So if they want to come on the HDC, being appointed by the selectmen to an alternate position would give them time to learn the ropes to see if they want to be on the HDC really, and then run if they become a known entity and they have the courage to do it. But to monkey around with a percentage of the 5 regular members and put somebody into a position like that with no idea of what's going on, no experience, no nothing, is crazy, especially with the amount of work that we're working with now. We've got 100 and some odd cases this week. Back in September, when they were really trying to get all their jobs approved for this winter, and next spring, we were going 140 a week. We were meeting on Tuesdays, we're meeting on Thursdays. We've sort of been able not to meet the last couple of Thursdays, but we're meeting this week and we're meeting next Thursday because we're off for 3 weeks because of the holidays. So if somebody really wants to come out and be vetted and get on, then do it through the selectmen, but do it as an alternate, and that takes some of the pressure off of them to try to hit the ground running. It's trial by fire for at least 2 or 3 years. I've been on almost 18 years, I think. I've lost track. And probably after 5 years, I started being able to read a set of plans, but I also had worked for a contractor. I had also worked with plans at the ZBA. I'd also seen plans elsewhere. So I had a little bit of understanding what I was looking at, but there are people that have been on for years that still can't really read a set of plans. And you have to be able to do that. So if they want to come on, then let the selectmen appoint them as alternates and leave the regular board, the 5 members that are responsible for 90% of the cases. We have to be responsible to the public, because it's the public we deal with directly every single week. And it takes it out of the political football arena. After the article came out last month, I didn't find one person that knew that they had voted for that last year and were in support of the selectmen appointing some and not all. It sort of creates a dichotomy among the 5 regular members. I think we should all be elected, like the planning board, and the alternates appointed by the Board of Selectmen. That's why the 2 articles are in.
Okay, thank you. Questions or comments? Okay. I may be confused, but the next one was this is kind of a long and lengthy in
Right, that's the
writing.
rewrite.
That's the rewrite.
Yeah.
Okay. Just
Let me back up for a second.
Oh.
There is a work group that's been functioning with this, and we're meeting, Steve is here, he's on the work group also. There are 7 of us. And we put these in to get them in, but because they're home rule petitions, we can tinker with them, and the work group is meeting almost every week to massage them and get them correct, so we can alter them through the process right up to town meeting, which will probably happen. So there's some things we have to agree with, some things we don't, but we put them in.
Okay. So the work group, this is a culmination of the work group's efforts?
This was after a lengthy discussion. We started this last year, probably almost exactly a year ago. We started talking about this, about whether we should adopt 40C or try to fix our enabling legislation. There's only 3 of us that are under special legislation. When you sit down and take a really hard look at 40C, adopting 40C in place of our legislation would create a massive problem. There's a lot of stuff in language use process in 40C that would not benefit Nantucket at all, which is why we have special legislation. Plus, we were one of the first in the state to get our legislation. The rest of them came by many years later. So after lengthy discussions with experts in Boston, over that weekend, it became very clear that adopting 40C would be very detrimental to Nantucket. You can't tinker with it. It is state law. You can't adopt some and not the rest. You have to take the whole thing, including bad stuff for Nantucket. So what we came up with was that you have to suck out there's a lot of great stuff in it. You have to suck it out and stick it into our legislation, which is what I did over that weekend. And we're sitting down to talk about it again on Wednesday to see how much more tinkering we can do with it and whether there's any smoother transitions in some sections. But there are large parts of 40C that are great, that are better stated than ours. And there were a lot of mistakes, a lot of clerical errors in our original act that were never corrected. Wrong terms, it's just weird stuff. So we sucked it out, stuck it in. I showed you where the cross-offs are in our legislation and the highlighted sections, which I don't see up really clearly up there. But the highlighted sections, most of 99% of it is coming directly out of 40C with changes in terminology, like certificates of appropriateness. They don't use that term. We do. So it's sort of a conglomeration of the two, but it's still in our special act where we have control over it, and it's still a home rule petition.
Okay.
So we'll be working through that for the next 2 or 3 months ourselves.
All right. John?
Yeah, Linda, when do you expect it to be completed?
Well, probably by February. I mean, I've done all the heavy lifting. Now we got to refine and
Yeah,
correct.
yeah.
So I can't imagine it's going to take longer than February.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other further questions? David?
Yeah, so Linda, or Steve, or both of you, so the final document, or what you want to propose at town meeting, will that will be the consensus? I don't know how you guys
Yeah.
make your decisions.
And then the
of
HTC
work
has
group
to do
that
it.
has been
Yeah.
Appointed?
Yeah,
So
and then
that-
well, it was appointed by the HDC. We're going to do our due diligence. The HDC voted to allow the work group to work through all of this stuff. And then we bring it back to the HDC. We'll have a formal hearing on solely this issue before the HDC. All of our members have the copy, and all of the work group has a copy, and including some interested parties have a copy. And the HDC will vote yay or nay, or ask for some changes. But all that will be taking place over the next couple of months.
And we're going to have a public hearing, Mr. Chairman, on
February 9th.
9th?
Yeah.
Are you guys going to be done by then?
We should be. As I say, most of the heavy lifting's been done. I left out the stuff in 40C that would have been completely detrimental to us.
So when we do another public hearing, it sounds like you're prepared to come with what the completed language and what you'd be prepared to go to town meeting with?
Yes.
Okay, great, thanks.
Okay. And just to be clear, the language that you would be coming with would be the motion that you would like us to put in the warrant.
Yes.
Okay.
To be clear.
Okay. Further questions? Okay. Well, there we go. And we'll see where it goes, and good luck on that. That's a lot of work going into that. Very good. You may want to stand there for one more. It's to amend the sewer bylaw to include parcels on South Pasture Lane and South Shore Road in the town sewer district. And again, Linda Williams is the sponsor.
Sewers, 10 feet away from me. 10 feet away from me. Half the road is in it. The rest of us aren't.
Okay.
Runs down right there. We have water on our street now.
Okay. We will be waiting from the town administration recommendations, the planning director, health director, and DBW director.
I don't know if any of us on our street could actually afford to do it, but there may be a way at some point to tie into what's directly across from street from me, which you have a dead end right in front of me at Sherburne Commons. The septics on our street, except for the one next door, are probably some of the oldest in the South Shore Road, otherwise known as the Badlands area. We're all working class people. If there's a way to tie into sewer, we'd like to give up our septics because we're all getting pumped out every 2 or 3 months. So it's, it's pretty heavy duty back there. I've been back there going on 32 years, and I'm one of the oldest ones on the street, but there are 2 that are even older than I am. So.
Okay. All right. Very good. Oh, Cliff, I'm sorry.
We seem to do this a lot, almost every year. What's the argument against it usually?
Well, apparently, according to somebody, they have the sewer group that reviews these things.
Mm-hmm.
We met 6 or 7 out of 10 criteria. Well, I'm also 100 feet away from the force main, but we can't tie into that either.
Right.
And then you know my street. At the very end of the street, the sewer runs right by me, right out to Abrams Quarry. I mean, it's all around me. I've got Sherburne Commons directly across the street from me. And when they did the 800-foot area from Abrams Quarry to be able to tie in, it ends up my property line with my next door neighbor. There's only 6 lots on that street.
Okay. All right. Further questions or comments? Okay, very good. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And our last one is an amendment to the zoning bylaw by creating a new definition of tiny house and allowing the use in all zoning districts by special permit or as an accessory use and prohibiting use of trailer or building-like container for residential purposes, except such structures designated as tiny houses and storage trailers as are necessary for the storage of chemicals by the fire department. And this is sponsored by Isaiah Stover. And anyone like to speak on this? Yes. There's a couple coming. Oh. The crowd. Okay.
I only know about this because it was presented to me by Isaiah, and this is actually a technical name of a movement. If you were to Google tiny house, it's actually a name of these small cottages. The HDC has seen some very similar to the tiny house movement right after Katrina. They were called Katrina cottages at one point. There's a couple of them in Nantucket that we approved. They're very small. Basically, you can do this, or somebody bigger than me can do that. And they're cute little structures. They take up very little ground cover. Usually they're one room or one bedroom. And I think this is being presented because there's always a crunch for housing, particularly in the summer. I mean, I've never seen it as bad as I've seen it this summer. And I've got year-round people that are being kicked out of their homes because they're being sold. They can't find anything anywhere. They're now looking on the Cape. And these are working families here. One works at the hospital. And she's going for a nursing degree, and they've got kids in the school system. I mean, it's just, I've never seen it in the 41 years I've lived here year-round as bad as I saw it last summer, and I'm seeing it over the winter. These, I believe, are an interesting idea, an interesting solution. We'd obviously have to deal with a zoning bylaw because technically you're only allowed 2 dwellings on one lot. But it may work for people that have smaller lots. They can do pocket 40Bs, where you can put 4 of these little ones on a fairly small lot, preferably on sewer and water. So this is an interesting idea. The planning board has not been presented with it yet, but it is a topic of discussion. So it may be a way to alleviate some of the housing problems or some of the financial problems and allow somebody to be able to get a cheap house and be able to support their mortgages. So it's an interesting idea that should be talked about, and I expect we'll have a long discussion at the planning board.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Oh, Cliff? Yeah. You have a question for Linda?
Yeah, maybe.
Oh, Linda? I'm sorry.
Maybe I missed it. When it just says tiny house, I've seen people who had, like you said, a second dwelling. They've had like bunk houses, which is probably just a shed on steroids.
Well, bunk houses aren't allowed by law, and without,
Wow.
they'd have to have a kitchen and everything else in them. You can't have an ancillary structure for human habitation.
Right. Anyway, I've seen people call them bunk houses. But anyway, this doesn't have any dimensions that I can. 500.
You'd have to look them up. I don't remember the exact technical stuff, but they're under 800 square feet.
It was 500 square feet,
Yeah,
the
500
town
square
council
feet.
told us.
Yeah.
500 square feet. Okay.
An interesting concept, and they're one floor. They usually don't have basements. They have little porches on the front of them. They're really cute. And
Yeah.
it may be something we need to start talking about here.
Sure. All right. Yeah. Yes. Bunk houses.
One of our sons brought this forward, and basically, he has been really entranced with this whole idea. And we have seen, there's an actual show on every week now, Tiny House Nation it's called. And so these houses could be anywhere from 700 or 300 or 500 square feet, and they have like maybe a little loft with a mattress, and then they have a couch that you can sit on and a fold-up table that you can use, put your computer on. There's a small stove, a sink, a refrigerator. Some of it runs on solar power. They have, like, maybe you could have a gas hookup for a stove, a heating stove, as well as a cooking stove. There's just, I mean, the possibilities are endless. And I have kids stacked up like cordwood, and none of them are going to be able to own a house here. And 6 kids can't take care of one house. So, you know, there's just no way that my kids will ever live here unless they can find some place like this, get build a house for $10,000 or $20,000 and start saving for a real house. There's just no way. I mean, there's so many people here that are moving off island. I know one that works at Brock's, or Condon and Coleman rather, and she's lived here her whole life. And she has no place to live now. Her house has been sold. So this is happening everywhere.
Jim, oh, okay, you're pointing over there.
So,
Sorry.
I think as someone said, this is a movement, and I think that maybe, I think the answer to the housing crisis we have has to be multifaceted. I happen to have seen one of these houses on Nantucket, but I was taken there blindfolded, so I can't tell you where it is. But it serves a niche market, especially for young, newly, married families or people just, so it's it's something to be thinking about as we move forward, so.
Okay, thank you. Anything? David, yeah.
Is there anything now that prevents anybody from building a, quote, tiny house?
I don't know, but I know my son would like to do it legally.
I mean,
No, Linda
we don't
answered that.
we don't prohibit. I'm sorry?
Oh, that's the limitation.
Okay, so this isn't as much a tiny house issue as it is a zoning issue and putting more houses or dwellings onto a lot.
Right. Okay. All right, very good. Any other questions or comments?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Well, that runs through all 30 articles. And again, thank you for all who participated. The committee, at its discretion, can move forward and start making recommendations on some of these. Some we still need some more data on. But as we go along, we will have these on our agenda and move forward there. All right, so I'd like to close the public hearing, and then we'll move on to our regular meeting. All right. The next is approval of minutes for the meeting on December 4th. We just received these today, so instead of taking these up today, I'm going to go ahead and move and take these up at our next meeting. Okay? All right. Committee reports? Any committees? I don't have anything. Oh, David? Yeah.
Well, I was late because I was upstairs at the sewer planning work group. So
okay, very good.
The debate was which was going to be more interesting, this meeting or that one. But
it's a toss-up.
Yeah, it's a toss-up. So the consultants were here, and we're trying to drive this process a little faster than it's been going.
Good.
So that we have a plan.
Oh, there's a plan?
So we have one.
Oh, that's good. You can't wait to hear that. That is good. All right, thank you for that update. Any other committee reports? All right. Next is in our packet, we have a review of some contracts, and at our November 13th meeting, some questions were brought up on the presentation that have been addressed, and the contracts are here for your review. And we'd like to start with the police. And Brian, I'd like to turn the floor over to you if you want to make any comments, and we'll go one at a time.
The only thing I'll let everybody know is after the meeting in November, we took it back and spent a considerable amount of time going through and actually creating a system to put the 3 prior year contract years into actuals so that we could sum them up and then run estimates for 15, 16, 17 years. So the under the projected 3-year total, that is actually comparing what we project the 3-year total to cost of the contract versus the actual for the prior 3 years. One thing I do want to keep and make sure everybody's aware of, it has a rather significant projection for health insurance, which I don't know whether it will be what we had projected, 12%, which is what our health insurance consultant had indicated a while ago. So conceivably that could change, and truthfully it could change up or down. My hope is it would go down. So I mean, some of these others, other than the actual salary permanent part, are obviously projections. But I think this is what you were all looking for in talking to the chairman last week and showing this quickly. I believe this is what everyone was looking for. So
I haven't heard the contrary since it was sent out, so we'll go with this. Okay. You ready for some questions?
Sure.
Questions, anyway? Joe.
I'll start. Brian, just so I understand here, if you look at the 3-year salary number on, say, I'll take the patrol officers. You know, you got $4.7 million versus 4.2 million for the prior 3-year contract, if I'm looking just the top line number. So you end up with, I get 12.2% is the increase from one 3-year to another 3-year. You know, you sort of break it down, it's still more than 2% a year. So the difference is what, promotions and new staff and all that stuff?
Absolutely. I mean, the 2% is what's added to the contract. I mean, you always have people moving along the contract, and in this case, we do have officers starting at the lower end, so across this contract, they're obviously going to be moving down the steps through the contract. So that would be the reason why. Yes.
Okay. So then, if you look at the superior officer's contract, though, you don't get a 12% kind of number. I get 3.8% increase. So has there actually been a shrinkage in senior officer staffing?
Well, it would be
from one 3-year contract to another. I would have thought it would have been more like a 9 or 10%
number.
number.
More people at the top, so once they get there, there's no other place to go other than straight 2%.
Okay,
so once we're getting, there may be they're reaching it faster. So there's not as many when we get to the end there.
See, but a 2% compounded over 3 years you still end up with 7 or 8%, and it's only 3.8%. So it sounds like somebody's missing, or does that make sense? Or maybe I did my arithmetic wrong.
Well, I mean, I took it from the actual schedule of officers that are here, so I'd actually, to answer that question, I'd probably have to go back and look at it a little bit more.
It was sort of a nice trend to the number. I just didn't quite understand it. So, and then my last question, Mr. Chairman, on the Our Island Home numbers, I was struck by the sort of dramatic, the assumption that there would be a dramatic decline in overtime. $600,000 in the prior 3-year contract, and 200 and something. Obviously, that has an impact on the sort of 3-year versus 3-year. I'm just curious: is there a change in working conditions, or is that just an optimistic assumption?
I think that it may be an optimistic hope that would be the case. I mean, what we did was we built a lot of these based on the prior years, and so I'd have to go back and look and see what exactly in the 3 years where that 600 was driven from, because for some of these calculations we looked at the last year and kind of assumed that may be the case carrying forward. So I can go back and I'll get that answer for you too. That's not a problem.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Further questions? David?
Yeah, if I can address this to Rachel. Rachel? Rachel. Just on the overtime issue, do you think, is it 75 or 70? Yeah, 75. Is that what you're experiencing
No.
in your run rate?
I would have to kind of talk with Brian and maybe Martin about the spreadsheet. I never actually looked at that line, I have to say. But we roughly do right now, or about 150 just in CNA. So I think that 200 and whatever might be per year, which would be another compounded 600, closer to 700. So that might be a little off in that spreadsheet, but that's something that we'll have to look at. It'll change that factor. I don't see how we would only hit 75,000 in a year for the entire department.
And what's driving the overtime? Is it just we have to fill in for people that
It's filling in. Before, we didn't have any per diems. Now we do, but they have limited availability. We have had a couple of maternity leaves. We have had more workers' comp long-term out-of-work claims this past year. So it's things that have been impacting us on multiple levels. We've also had, which happens every now and then, you can't predict it in any way. We've had 2 situations where we had to one-on-one an individual that stays at the island home, and we have to actually, that's above and beyond what's budgeted, and that could be where a lot of that overtime is being driven in this year. I only know that 150 off the top of my head because we are actually just looking at our current budget and where we're looking at this time. So I think that one line on the OIH might need to be adjusted a little bit, but I can work with Brian on figuring that out.
Okay. Being that the case on your budget, instead of going ahead and voting on this, because again, I don't think time's an issue. I think we'll go ahead and put this on an agenda maybe next week. Would that be possible, to come back and have
Sure.
anything, things to be settled by then?
Sure.
Does everyone feel all right with that?
I
Yeah, okay.
I personally would be happy to vote on it right now. I mean, I don't.
Well, we can
we're
talk
gonna
about it either
make
way.
We're going to make an adjustment. It is kind of what it's going to be.
I do understand, just want to be sure that
Yeah.
everybody knows what they're
I mean,
voting for.
That's my.
So we can talk
my
about
view.
it.
I'm with David, so.
Okay, we can get it out of the way, that's great.
I'm
I
happy
just
to
want to be.
move it forward.
Okay. And if we do, then when time for a motion, that's great, I'll entertain one. Any other questions on, since we're taking both Island Home and Police, on either one? John?
Just a statement, I think, looking at that, I know how, when we see the budgets, I'm gonna be looking at the budgets and looking at this, and hopefully they tie out, and I got a feeling that they might not. So, just from a tidiness point of view, when the budgets come through, we would hope that they are consistent with what we're seeing.
Statement. Okay, great. All right. Any other questions? Okay. There are 3 separate contracts. I can take a motion for all 3. If there's, I'm more than happy to do that, or we could do one at a time. So whatever is the comfortable will of the committee.
So moved, all 3?
All 3. Is there a second? Okay. Discussion on the motion to approve all 3. Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, great. All set. All right. Next item is review of citizen warrant articles. I think we probably had enough for today. We have a meeting scheduled on, this will lead us to our next topic, date of next meeting. Meeting scheduled on December 11th, and a meeting is scheduled on December 15th. I did schedule 2 meetings, but personally, I think we only need 1, because we will have a meeting on December 18th. If you are all in agreement with that, which day would you rather meet? This Thursday or next Monday? Okay. Any preference over here?
No particular preference, I got them both on my calendar.
Okay. Do a show of hands? If not, I'll probably say this next Monday, but if. Monday, is that all right? Okay. So why don't we cancel the meeting on Thursday, and then our next meeting will be December 15th, here at 4 o'clock, and it'll be review of the citizen warrant articles. And I jotted down which ones that we're ready to take motions on. I don't know if you want to jot these down.
Is this what you assume we can easily vote on?
No, there's no. No, I don't think so, unless
Yeah.
I'm being, there's some zoning, there's some that, like, for example.
I see what you're saying.
Mr. Barada, we need some more information on. The zoning ones we won't be doing, but the other ones we
Yeah,
would.
we have enough information on.
Yeah, and now, if I'm wrong, which wouldn't be the first time, then
All right.
correct me on that. In fact, let's go over that right now. Let's do, if you have your list in front of you. The ones I jotted down would be A, B, G, K, L, M, N, O, U, V, Z, double A, and double B. And the others either we're not ready yet or they're zoning. If anyone has a difference for that, let me know. Hearing none, that's where we'll start. And next Monday.
Perfect. 4 o'clock?
4 o'clock. Now, before I ask for an adjournment, one member had wanted to talk about it. Let's go to you. Yeah. You want to bring something up?
Just, no, really quickly.
Sure.
When Ken Bogran was here presenting for the CPC, I had asked him about a request for funds for sustainable.
Yes.
I had a concern. There was a few issues that I thought were of an issue, and I asked him if they felt good about this particular request. I have spoke to the director of sustainable, and she clarified those past thoughts I had. So I'm comfortable with that. The CPC's recommendation on sustainable.
Okay.
So just everything's clear.
Super. That's great.
That's it.
Okay. Good. Any other? All right. So I'll ask for a motion for adjournment. All right. And I think we're set. So everybody have a good week and see you next Monday.
Thank you.
All right.
TV's.